Hello and welcome to Computology Academy. And as we all know that there is a huge vacancy in BPSC and the time duration which is available to prepare for the prelims is very short, although most of the students were preparing for the prelims examination of the BPSC as well as mains since long time ago. However, a quick revision and the practice of the MCQ will make great changes, will make great differences in your ability to clear the prelims examination and be above the cutoff. That is why we have curated this course, that is the crash course for BPSC prelims examination, in which we are focusing only on the most important parts of the syllabus from which there is highest probability of getting the examination questions in the paper. And for that matter, this course becomes indispensable for all those students who are lagging in some of the parts or already who have prepared but they want a better uh, probability to clear the prelims examination and to be prepared in a better way, right? So for those students, this course is going to be very helpful, and the course cost is not too high, that is just 999 rupees. So go to our website and purchase the course. So let us start with the class. So here, first of all, today we will discuss about the arrival and the expansion of the Europeans, and we are starting with the portion of history because history is the subject from which you will get the highest number of questions in BPSC prelims examination. Out of 150 questions, you will get almost 30 questions, that is 20% of the questions will be from history. It may go above or it may be a bit lower, but the average is that much, right? So let us start with the arrival of the Europeans. So here, the Europeans arrived in India and their expansion was a prolonged process. It was not a short duration process but a prolonged process. And here the beginning of the settlement of the Europeans in India and their coming to India was caused by various factors, and some of the major factors are discussed over here. So first of all, let us talk about the trade routes that was between India and Europe, because the Europeans were in great need of the spices. They were getting the spices, silk, textile, cotton, and other things from India. So the first route passed from the northwest frontier province region of India through the Central Asia, Russia and the Baltic Sea, and thereafter it used to reach out to Europe. The next route was through the Red Sea, that was the sea route from Arabian Sea to the Persian Gulf, and thereafter through Constantinople crossing the Mediterranean Sea they used to reach out to Europe, right? So here in 1453 Constantinople fell. It was under the rule of Greek. Greek were controlling the trade from here. They were controlling Constantinople and they were controlling the trade route from India to Europe. But after the fall of Constantinople, Turkey started to control this Constantinople route, right? And they started to control the whole trade route. And because of this, what happened? The Europeans were not getting good supply of the spices, as well as the price started to rise because the Turkish had established the monopoly, right? So the Turkish monopoly over the trade was hampering the availability as well as the cost of the spices in Europe. And thereafter the Europeans started to look for the other alternatives. So first of all, here one of the person who was Henry the Navigator, he is also known as the Navigator. He invented compass, magnetic compass, which always used to point towards north. And through this, they were able to navigate for the longer distances in the open sea. And in 1486, Bartholomew discovered the Cape of Utmasa, right? And through this, they started to try to reach out to India. So here, some of the main regions that forced the Europeans to reach out to India, specifically they were searching for the Spice Islands. So first of all, the mercantile system was growing in Spain and Portugal. So because of this, the price was rising, and because of this, the people of Spain and Portugal were looking for the avenues to maximize their profit, and demand for the spices was very high in Europe, especially for paper. So why the paper was in great news in Europe, great demand in Europe? Because during the winter season the people in Europe were not able to cultivate the land or go for hunting or any other thing because of the snowy condition. And after the fall of winter, they used to survive on preserved meats. So the preservation of meat was their priority, for which they needed paper, because they used to preserve the meat using salt and pepper. And because of that, paper was in very high demand throughout Europe, and attractive profits was being made through the business of paper, spices, that is from India, as well as textile and the other things also. So the prices were high, the profits were high, and there was a gold shortage also in Europe, because after the establishment of Turkey's monopoly on trade, due to the rise in the prices of the spices and other commodities, what happened? The Europeans had to pay more and more gold, because at that very time the currency was gold. So they had to pay more and more to the Turkish people, Turkish traders, as well as they were paying the taxes also, and because of that there was shortage of gold in Europe, and they were looking for some supply of gold also, and they had heard about India, that is the golden bird, हिंदी में जिसको कहते हैं सोने की चिड़िया. तो ये भी एक उनका मोटिव था to get the gold also. And all these above factors led the Europeans to find new routes to India, and the initiative was taken by Portugal and Spain. They started to dare, actually they started the exploration to find new routes to the Spice region or the Spice Islands. So first of all, we will talk about the arrival and the expansion of the Portuguese, the Portugals, right? So Vasco da Gama, the first person to reach out to India from Europe, he started to sail from Lisbon and reached to Calicut in 1498 AD, and he discovered new sea route by circumnavigating the Cape of Good Hope, that is the southern tip of Africa, and he had taken 90 days. His travel time from Lisbon to Calcutta, Calicut was 90 days. 90 days of voyage was done by him. And Abdul Malik Gujarati, he was a businessman. Abdul Malik was a businessman, Gujarati businessman. He had facilitated or helped Vasco da Gama to reach to the Calicut coast, and he got a warm welcome by the Jamorin tribe of Calicut, because they were seeing the new people, the white people, completely different physical features and the other things, as well as they had brought many things from Europe also. So they were warmly welcomed by the people of Calicut, and from here he purchased black paper and went back to Europe, where he made 60 times profit. 60 times profit. Suppose that he had purchased the paper in 1 rupee, so he sold that in 60 rupees. So this was the profit he made, and a new era began. Because of this profit, the Europeans thought that this is the best business, this is the best trade method, right? However, earlier the Arabs were making this profit. Arab merchants were doing the trade between India and Europe basically through different sectors, right? But what happened, as the Portuguese reached to Calicut coast directly, then the Arabs got infuriated and they protested it. However, the Portuguese fought bravely and they defeated the Arabs. So where they were defeated, Pedro Alvarez Cabral, he was the leader. When next time the Portuguese came to India under his leadership, again the people, Portuguese people came to Calicut, and here this time they were not here only for trade, but Gabriel was trying to establish a political authority, a political power of the Portuguese in Calicut. So first of all, what he did, he aroused the hostility between the Jamorins and the Arab traders. सबसे पहले इन लोगों को लड़वा दिया. So the divide and rule policy is not new, or it was not invented by the Britishers, but the Portuguese had started to use it since their arrival, right? So after this fight, after this hostility between the Jamorins and the Arabs, the Portuguese were the major power and they established their authority over Calicut, and Cochin became their new trading base. They made Cochin as their trading base, and initially the Portuguese traded only in spices because the spices were fetching good profit. But later on what happened, later on they thought that there is no other power who can control the sea routes, because the Portuguese were very advanced in navy. So they thought that why not to control the other trades of this region or from this region. So they monopolized all the other forms of trades, all the business activities from the Asian coast, right? So here next, the first viceroy after the establishment of Portuguese authority in Calicut was Francisco de Almeida. He was the first viceroy of Portuguese, and this is very important. Many of the times this question appears in the paper, right? And he implemented this blue water policy or calm water policy, and under this blue water policy they established complete authority over Indian Ocean and the Arabian Sea, right? So whoever wanted to sail through this, they were the authority from which they needed the permission or the permit. And here the Francisco de Almeida was of the view, rather than establishing or rather than building a land army, it is more fruitful to have a navy and control the oceans, the trade routes, rather than controlling the land. It is going to be more beneficial, and for that matter they had implemented this blue water policy, and even they started to call the Arabian Sea as Portuguese Lake. They named it as Portuguese Lake. तो यहाँ तक वो लोग पहुँच गए थे, है ना? And he was conferred with all the powers from the King of Portugal. He was having the power to wage war, make treaties, political powers, revenue powers, all those things were with him, right? And this made Kochi the center of political power, the another center of political power of the Portuguese. And Gujarat and Bijapur were apprehensive of the Portuguese intent. किसी को भी डर लगेगा भाई एक फॉरेन पावर आ गया यहाँ पे आके बैठे जा रहा है. And the gradually the dominance of the Portuguese were increasing. So the Gujarat and Bijapur were apprehensive of their motive, their intent, and they formed an alliance with Turkey and Egypt. And Turkey and Egypt were also against the Portuguese because they were incurring the losses due to the direct trade between Calicut and that of Portugal or Europe. So the Portuguese were making the money and the Turkey and Egypt were losing the money. So they also supported Gujarat and Bijapur, and the combined forces defeated the Portuguese at Chaul in 1508. However, this victory over Portugal didn't lasted long, and in the same year Almeida defeated the combined forces at Diu Island, and this defeat was a decisive defeat. Thereafter, basically Turkey and Egypt withdrew from this alliance, and they thought that it is better to leave the Indian kings at their own, and we should remove our support from them, because the Portuguese are so good in navy that we cannot defeat them. So that was the thought process. And Alfonso de Albuquerque, he was the second viceroy, and he is considered as the real founder of Portuguese power in India, right? So basically, from the ruler of Bijapur, Yusuf Adil Shah, he won. He defeated the ruler of Bijapur, and from Yusuf Adil Shah, he got confiscated Goa, right? And thereafter, Goa became the new business center, the new business capital of the Portuguese because of the better condition, the coast, and the other things. And thereafter, in 1511, the trading market of Southeast Asia between Malacca and Strait of Malacca basically and Gulf of Hormuz was being controlled by the Portuguese. Such a vast expanse of the sea route or the coastline was being controlled by the Portuguese. So this was the situation, and they established a matrimonial, it's not a, but they started to establish the matrimonial relation with the Indians also. Basically, you will find the mixed races of the Portuguese origin or Portuguese descendants in Goa and the along the western coast of India, right? So here they started to establish matrimonial relations with Indian also, and basically this viceroy also started to include the Indians in his army also. Basically, he was not of the view that the Indians would be excluded completely from the services or from the matrimonial relations or any such kind of thing. But he was of the view that mingling with the Indians and recruiting the Indians in the army also will gain the support for the Portuguese, and it will be a better situation for the Portuguese to rule in the region. However, Viceroy Nino da Cunha, he shifted the headquarter from Kochi to Goa. So again this becomes an important question. So here the question may be, who was the Portuguese viceroy who shifted their headquarters from Kochi to Goa, and he established the settlements at St. Thom, Madras, Hooghly and Diu also. So basically he was focusing on the expansion, right? And the monopoly of trade reached its peak in the 16th century. During the 16th century, the Portuguese were at their zenith, at their peak in the monopoly of trade. एक छत्र राज कर रहे थे वो लोग, ठीक है. And because of this, the Portuguese were controlling the complete Indian Ocean. The Indian Ocean was completely under the control of the Portuguese with respect to trade monopoly, and they were controlling the Arabian Sea, Arabic and the Indian ships were having to pay the cartridge tax, right? So here what was happening, whichever the ship wanted to cross through the Arabian Sea or the Indian Ocean, they had to pay the cartridge tax. Basically that was a tax on the passage of the ship, so that their goods should not be confiscated by the Portuguese Navy. तो उसके लिए एक तरह से आप कह लो कि टोल टैक्स या रंगदारी टैक्स, वट एवर इट इज, बट दे वे आर कलेक्टिंग इट, राइट? एंड Akbar gave the permit or the cartridge permit for trade in Gulf of Khambat to the Portuguese. Akbar had provided this permit or this authority. And because here again one question arises that why Akbar gave this authority or the permit to the Portuguese. So here Mughals were having a good army, but they were not having any experience of navy, any naval capability, right? And for that matter, they also knew that in respect of the control over the sea or the Indian Ocean or the Arabian Sea, they cannot dominate or they cannot defeat the Portuguese. So better कि उनको दे दो भाई control, जा ऐस कर, ठीक है? So they gained the control from the Persian Gulf to Strait of Malacca, Malay Peninsula and the Spice Islands in Indonesia. So complete South Asia and Southeast Asia was in the control of the Portuguese with respect to trade, right? So here again Alfonso de Souza, Alfonso de Souza, एक आम भी इस नाम से मिलता है, बड़ा फेमस है ना. So he was the Jesuit saint. He was the person during which the Jesuit saint Francis Xavier visited India, and Portuguese took over the entire Arabian coast. Entire Arabian coast was under the control of the Portuguese. However, they were not focusing more on the political expansion, rather than they were focusing on the economic interest. पैसा बनाने में ज्यादा बिजी थे ये लोग, ठीक है, but not on consolidating their political power in the region, and they did not make any political expansion as their goal. So this was the thing. And what was the reason for the decline of the Portuguese in India? So basically there are some common reasons which will lead to the decline of most of the European powers. The first one is wrong trade policies, looting and robbery, right? So they were looting the passerby ships also, they were doing the robbery also, they had the wrong trade policy, they were intolerant in their religious policy, they were having the attitude of Christian jingoism, right? The competition from the other European trade companies also started, right? So other European trade companies also started to enter the region, enter India. Inadequate trading technology was there with the Portuguese, and greater control of the Portuguese king over the company's affairs and the Portuguese viceroy. Basically everything was being submitted to the Portuguese king for his approval, or for intimating him that what is happening in India, what kind of actions they are taking, and all those kind of things. And discovery of new colonies in Brazil and in Latin America. So basically their focus was also diverted, their focus was also like divided between two different regions, and this was also a cause of decline of Portuguese power in India. And now here Shah Jahan in 1632 AD, he had given the Portuguese the authority to trade in Hooghly. Next, Aurangzeb, he stopped the evil influences of Portuguese and raiders of the Chittagong. So he controlled the Portuguese, basically checked the Portuguese and their ill activities in Chittagong, which is nowadays in Bangladesh. And what was the contribution of Portuguese in India? So tobacco was brought by the Portuguese in India. First printing press was established in Goa by the Portuguese in India. Gothic architecture was brought by the Portuguese in India, that later on contributed to the development of Indo-Gothic architecture, right? And potato and corn were brought from America to India by the Portuguese, and also the Portuguese facilitated the printing of a book on Indian medicinal plants during their reign from Goa, and they published it, right? Now come to the Netherlands. Netherlands, that is Dutch company, right? So here the residents of Holland and Netherlands are collectively called as the Dutch East India Company. They both of them had established this, and after the decline in the Portuguese Eastern trade monopoly, they started to establish their own trade establishments in this region. So the collaboration of Portugal and Spain forced the Dutch to look for the alternative sources of the spices, because when the Portuguese and the Spanish people, Portugal and Spain, they collaborated with each other, and thereafter they established a monopoly, they started to demand exorbitant prices for their spices, which they were taking to Europe from India. And for that matter, many of the European powers, not only Netherlands, were looking for the new avenues to get the spices, and one of the technique or one of the way out was to find out new routes to Spice Islands and there establish the trading sectors over here, right? So in 1596, Cornelis Houtman, he sailed through Cape of Good Hope and Sumatra and Bentham and reached out to India, and in 1602 United Dutch East India Company was established, right? So the navigational power of the Dutch was greater than that of the Portuguese. They were better than Portuguese, right? So Dutch established their first factory at Masulipatam, and here greater interest in Indonesia's spice trade was shown by these Dutch company people, because Dutch were of the view that rather than confronting the Portuguese, it is better to establish some different regions where they can do the trade in the spices. Their basic need was spices, not India. So they found it better to establish their trade factories or do the spice trade from Indonesia, right? However, from India, the cotton, textiles, indigo and salt paper was also being purchased by them. But for this, they were not so keen. Although they were purchasing cotton, textile, indigo and salt paper, but they were not so keen. And the king of Chandragiri gave them the permission to establish a factory at Pulicat. Pulicat nowadays in the Deltaic region in Andhra Pradesh, and from here they drove the Portuguese out of Malaya Strait, Strait of Malacca or Malaya Strait and Indonesia Islands, because they were more capable in the navy and they had established their stronghold in Indonesia and Malaya region, and the Portuguese were having their stronghold in India. So they drove out these Portuguese people from Indonesia and Malaya region, and Dutch built their commercial warehouses in Surat, Kochi, Nagapatnam, Machilipatnam, Chinsura and Patna also with the passage of time. However, the superiority of the English sailors forced the Dutch to focus on the islands of Indonesia only. Earlier also, they were focusing the islands of Indonesia more because of the Portuguese, but later on again, when the English came to India, then they again forced this Dutch company people to focus on Indonesia more than that of India, right? And in 1759, Battle of Bedra occurred, and the Dutch were driven out of India by the English people. And the downfall of the Dutch company was facilitated by various factors. Some of the major factors were over centralization, centralized authority or decision making was there. So this was delaying the decision making, and the other things, corruption was there in the company, administrative flaws were also there in the company. All this led to downfall of the Dutch East India Company, right? Now come to England, the major and the longest lasting power or European power in India, to establish their authority. So they were the most powerful group to establish trade monopoly in India, the British or the England. And the main reasons behind their success were what? First of all, England had a superior naval power than that of Portuguese and the Dutch also, right? Next, structural weakness of the Portuguese and the Dutch because of the corruption, over centralization and all those kind of things. Structurally, the Portuguese and the Dutch were weak, and such kind of things were not with the British. Strong administration of the English company. Administrative system was very strong, administrative system was very capable. Thereafter, active support of the merchants and the ruling class of England. So basically, the English company or the East India Company was having a good support in Britain. From Britain they were getting the support from the ruling class and the business class people. And the weakness of Indian forces also paved the way for the British success. Here the Indian people, Indian rulers were fighting among themselves. तो उनके लिए तो आसान हो गया, लड़ते रहो भाई हम चले, right? Now in 1579 William Drake circumnavigated the world through the sea, through the waters, and he discovered many routes to many regions, and one of them was to India. So he opened the sea routes to the east, and in 1599 John Mildenhall came to India by land route also, and thereafter he narrated, or he came to know about all the information, all the prosperity, all the availability of the commodities, spices, and all those kind of information he received from India when he came through land route to India, and there all this motivated the English people to come to India. And on 31st December 1600, on the year eve of 1600, East India Company was established and was permitted and was recognized by Queen Elizabeth Taylor I, right? And they got this authority for trade for 15 years in the East. So trading with the East for 15 years, right? So this was the thing. And the British Emperor James I, British Emperor James I gave this authority to the British East India Company to trade with the East indefinitely. So indefinite authority to right to trade with the East, right? Now in 1608 James I's envoy Captain Hawkins went to meet Jahangir and got the farman from him to trade in Surat, right? And Captain Hawkins also got a mansabdari of 400, and Jagir was also given to him, and he was given the title of Khan also. Captain Hawkins got the title of Khan also when he met Jahangir in Agra. सूरत में ट्रेड करने का तो राइट मिला तो मिला, बोले भाई इतने के लिए आया था और थोड़ा लेके जा। दिलदारी तो नवाबों की और मुगलों की अलग ही थी, राइट? So he got the right to trade in Surat, permission to trade. And here, as they got the trade rights in Surat, the Portuguese were apprehensive that they may not be in position to keep their monopoly in the spice trade and the other things. So they tried to conspire against the English people, against the Britishers. And due to their conspiracy, Portuguese conspiracy, later on Jahangir ordered the English people to leave Surat. However, in 1612, Captain Best fought a sea battle with the Portuguese, and the Portuguese were defeated by the British, right? And here in 1613, a royal decree for trading house was provided to the Britishers, and they again got the right to trade in Surat. जहांगीर ने भी सोचा आपस में लड़के फैसला कर ही लिए है, जा भाई लेने दे, है ना? ठीक है. So here Tyus Ackworth, he was in Surat and he established the first trading house of the English people in Surat. So who established the first trading house? यहाँ पर देखिए 4-5 चीजें हैं जो कि नोटेबल है, राइट? फर्स्ट, from where the trading establishment of the British started, that was Surat. First trading location Surat, first trading warehouse Surat. Who established it? Tyus Ackworth. So all these information may be there in the question, right? Now in 1616, Sir James Thomas Roe Sir James Thomas Roe was again sent by the king or the ruler of Britain, that is James I, to Ajmer. At that very time Jahangir was at Ajmer, and from here they again got the right to trade in Ajmer for 2 years. And during this period, what happened? They got the permission from the Mughal emperor to trade plus fortify also Surat. Trade plus fortification of Surat. And why this fortification authority was given to, or permission was given to the English people? So again there is a catch. Again and again there was conflict between the Portuguese, the British, the raiders, as well as some antisocial or the robbers. And because of this, again and again the Britishers were making complaint to the ruler that we are incurring losses due to all these activities, the war, the fight between the Portuguese and the English. The Portuguese are destroying our material, our establishment, and all those kind of things. They were destroying the battleships or the trading ships, and for that matter they requested the ruler, that is Jahangir, to allow them to fortify Surat, and thereafter they got the right to fortify Surat. And 1619 till 1619 they were having the trading rights in various locations, right? Like Ahmedabad, Bharuch, Vadodara, Agra, etc. Even they started to expand in South India. Their first factory in South India was at Masulipatam, and in 1661 Portugal's Princess Catherine I, Portugal's Princess Catherine of Braganza, she was married with the British prince, that is Charles II of Britain. And due to this marriage, what happened? Due to this marriage, in dowry, Bombay Islands was given to Charles. So now, who was the owner of Bombay Island? सोचिए, इंडिया के में है प्रॉपर्टी, इंडिया में है आइलैंड, पुर्तगाल दहेज में दे रहा है, राइटफुल ओनर कौन हो गया? इंग्लैंड। इंडिया को क्या मिला है भाई? कुछ नहीं, राइट? सो he Portugal gave this Bombay Island to Charles II in dowry, and in 1668 the East India Company got this Bombay Island at an annual rent of 10 pound only. 10 पाउंड इतना ही किराया था पूरे बॉम्बे का। आज के डेट में 10 पाउंड में महीने भर का किराया नहीं होगा किसी एक सिंगल रूम का, राइट? सो द पोर्चुगीज were confined to Goa, Daman and Diu, and the authority of the Britishers was established, right? So like the Dutch, England's mindset was England's immediate objective was what? Was to control the spices trade. All the European companies, whoever were coming to India, इनिशियली ऑल ऑफ देम वेर हैविंग द सिंगल पॉइंट एजेंडा कि कंट्रोल करना है मसाले को, बिकॉज इसी में सबसे ज्यादा पैसा है, राइट? एंड फॉर दैट मैटर दे वेर कंट्रोलिंग दिस स्पाइस ट्रेड, ट्राइंग टू कंट्रोल दिस स्पाइस ट्रेड. बट the British failed to penetrate the Dutch stronghold on the Spice Islands, that is Indonesia, and for that matter they started to focus more on India. So they understood the importance of India and they focused on India itself. And in 1667 the Dutch gave up their claims over India and the British gave up their claims on Indonesia. एक agreement हो गया दोनों के बीच में after long time conflict and all those kind of skirmishes. What happened? Both of the Dutch East India Company and East India Company, both of them decided that we should focus on our respective region, and both of them gave up their contradictory claims, right? And in 1759 Battle of Bedra occurred, which proved the naval superiority of the English people, and here also they expelled the Dutch from Surat, जो लास्ट बचा हुआ एस्टेब्लिशमेंट था डच का, that was Surat. They expelled them from there also. And in 1651, Bengal region, they started to expand. The Britishers started to expand in Bengal region also, and they got the trading rights from Shah Shuja after paying 3000 rupees per annum. 3000 रुपया एनुअली पे करना, ट्रेडिंग राइट्स मिल गए, लाइसेंस चार्ज, राइट, ठीक है. एंड इन 1651 ब्रिजमैन he got the Hooghly right for Hooghly, and he established the first factory at Hooghly. You can see the picture over here. And after this, Kasim Bazar, Patna, Rajmahal, etc. were also the locations where the Britishers established their factories. और ये एक्चुअली फैक्ट्री नहीं होते थे उस समय, जो ऐसा कुछ नहीं था कि यहाँ पर मैन्युफैक्चरिंग होता था या और कुछ होता था. बेसिकली दे यूज टू कॉल इट फैक्ट्रीज, बट एक्चुअल में ये वेयर हाउस होते थे, गोदाम होते थे, राइट, बट दे यूज टू कॉल इट एज फैक्ट्रीज, राइट. And in 1658, what happened? In 1658, Bengal, Bihar and Odisha, in all these regions, they started to trade. They got the trading rights. And in Coromandel coast also, they got the trading rights, and they established over here Fort St. George at Madras. Fort St. George at Madras. And in 1699, Azimuth Shah, he gave the Jamindari of Sutinata, Govindpur and Kalikata after a payment of annual payment of 1200 rupees. 1200 रुपये में कलकत्ता मिल गया था इनको, ठीक है. And all the three were combined, and Job Carnegie, he established modern Calcutta after incorporating all these three villages. These were actually villages. Sutinata, Govindpur and Kalikata were villages. And here what happened? Job Carnegie, he established modern day Calcutta, combining all these three villages, and he constructed this Fort William, right, over here, and the Fort William College is also over here itself. Now come to France, the last one to come to India, right, not last one but the second last one. So here France arrived in India as the fourth important European power, and the French East India Company was established in 1664. And in 1667, Francis Caro, he initiated this expedition team. He was the leader of this expedition team and reached to India. And in 1668, he got the farman or the permission from Aurangzeb to trade in India at Surat. And पता नहीं क्या होता है, सबको आके सबसे पहले सूरत से ही ट्रेड करना होता था. And one of the major reason was that route from Surat coast to Europe through sea was the shortest and the best route at that very time, even nowadays. As well as after landing on the coast, they can reach easily to Bombay, to the Great Northern Plains through Malwa route to Rajasthan and all these regions. So that is why Surat was so important from the point of view of trade, and even today it is very important, right? And in 1669, Merkara, he got the permission from the ruler of Golconda to establish his second factory at Machilipatnam. Second factory was established at Machilipatnam, Masulipatam भी कहते हैं इसको, and the person was Merkara, right? And Sultan of Golconda also gave them the diktat or the permission which exempted them from import-export taxes. Import-export duty भी हटा दिया, पता नहीं कौन से धुन में रहते थे, right? And from 1672 to 1713, there was a fierce conflict between France and Holland in Europe. which also affected India because the Dutch East India Company and the French East India Company also fought in India due to the fight that was going in Europe. मतलब होता है ना कि वहां पर लड़ रहे हैं बाबूजी, तो यहाँ पे भी भाई हम लोग भी हॉस्टल में पटका पटकी करा ही लेते हैं. So that was the situation. It was kind of family feud. And in 1701, Pondicherry became the headquarters of the French company and it was established by Martin. And French got this Chandan Nagar warehouse also. Chandan Nagar warehouse was also established by the French. In 1721, they captured Mauritius. In 1724, they captured Mahe, that is Malabar coast. In 1739, they captured Karaikal. In 1731, the chief of Chandan Nagar was Dupli. Who was chief of Chandan Nagar? He was Dupli. Dupli आगे भी हिस्ट्री में बहुत फेमस है, आगे भी बहुत important है, right? And in 1742, after the commercial interest were fulfilled, they started to look for the political power. By 1742, they had established their warehouses, their trading regions and all those kind of things. They were doing a good trade. Now their political aspirations started to rise. And the reason was of political interference was as a result of Anglo-French War that lasted for 20 years in Europe. So in Europe, the English and the French rulers were fighting, those emperors were fighting, and for that matter, what happened? These companies also started to fight over here and to establish their political authority. However, the power of England, the French could not survive in India. The power of England was very high. The naval power, their army excellence, as well as the leadership quality, the administration, their political prudence and shrewdness, all these kind of things led to the defeat of the French people. And because of that, what happened? The English people established their supremacy and the French people had to get restricted to certain regions, right? And after the defeat of the Portuguese, Dutch and the French companies, India was under the control of East India Company, and thereafter what happened? Thereafter they started their political expansion. बोले सबको निपटा लिए, अब यहाँ पर अपनी एक छत्र राज सेटअप करते हैं. The reason for the success of the British was what? First of all, naval superiority. सबसे पहले क्या था? They were having this superior navy. The French government's indifference to the company's organization, the Anglo-French competition in Europe contributed to the defeat of the French company also. Because सबसे पहले क्या था? At the first time, the French people, the French East India Company was not in position to confront or to fight a war with this East India Company, British East India Company. But due to the war going on in Europe, they started to confront the British East India Company over here in India, but they were not in position to fight with them, and due to that, what happened? They lost this war. Now the Danish people, Denmark, right? So after the British, the Danes came to India in 1616, and in 1620, they established their first factory at Travancore, Tanjavur district. And in 1676, Serampur, Bengal was their second factory. So you can understand what is the time gap. It is more than 50 years, 56 years. So they were not having that much of aspiration, that much of capability or whatever it is. So they were here just to trade. बाकी कुछ नहीं करना, थोड़ा मोड़ा सामान खरीदना है, छोटे बनिए हैं, काम चल जाएगा, right? So that was the thing. And in 1845, all the factories, whatever they were owning, they sold it to the British and they closed their shutter. ब्रिटिश को सारा धंधा बेच के चल दिए, बोले हमारे बस की बात नहीं है, राइट. सो what contributed to the rise of English power in Bengal? And the two turning points, Battle of Plassey and Battle of Buxar. So these are the important turning points of history which closed the fate of India for next 250 years. Right. So here in 1651, Anglo-Indians started to settle in Hooghly and they got this farman from Shah Shuja. And who was the person? He was Dr. Batten, and he paid 3,000 rupees as annual tax to get the permission for free trade. First of all, they started with free trade in Bengal by paying 3,000 rupees to Shah Shuja, the Nawab of Bengal. And in 1698, Azimuddin Shah gave this Jamindari of Sutinata, Calicut and Govindpur to the British East India Company by payment of 1,200 rupees. In 1717, Farooq Siyar gave the Golden Farman. And why this is called as Golden Farman? Because by paying only 3,000 rupees as annual tax, trade tax was exempted for the Britishers in Bengal. पूरा tax exemption मिल गया, right? And in 1700, Murshid Quli Khan was the Diwan of Bengal during the reign of Aurangzeb. And in 1717, Murshid Quli Khan became the governor of Bengal also. And some points to be noted over here. Here is the complete chronology of who were the governors or the rulers or the Nawabs of Bengal. First was Murshid Quli Khan, then Sujauddin, then Sarfaraj Khan, then Alivardi Khan, and last one was Sirajuddaulah, because after that the puppets were there, that is Mir Jafar and Mir Qasim, right? So those two people were next. So here first of all we will talk about Sirajuddaulah, who ruled Bengal between 1756 and 1757, just for 1 year around, because he was a young ruler, खून उबाल माल रहा था, young blood, aggressive, instantaneous decision making, so all those kind of things were there. So 3 contenders were there for the throne, and those were Shaukat Jung, Ghasiti Begum, the conspirator, and Mir Jafar, the conspirator. And here one thing is to be noted that Mohan Lal, a Kashmiri youth, was made powerful, and this was the reason for the bitterness between Shah Shuja, Sirajuddaulah and the Britishers, because this person was interfering in the British affairs, right? And Nawab wanted to stop the misuse of the Golden Farman that was given by Farooq Siyar, right? Because Farooq Siyar was the Mughal emperor, he had given this Golden Farman of tax exemption throughout Bengal, right? So when you will go on to read about the complete chronology of the rulers or the Mughal emperors after 1707, then you will see that quick succession was there after 1707 and between 1707 and 1718. Farooq Siyar, Nakku Siyar, Rafiuddaulah, Rafiuddarat, all those kind of people were there, right? So May 1756, what had happened? Sirajuddaulah attacked Qasim Bazar to stop the illegal activities or illegal trade of the Britishers. And one more thing was that he had got the information that apart from spices and cotton, textile and the other things, the Britishers are bringing arms and ammunition also at Fort William. So this was one of the major reason. And on 15th June, first of all, Sirajuddaulah had warned them that do not do such kind of illegal activities or conspire against the ruler otherwise you will have to face the consequences. But the Britishers were the Britishers, बोले हमको कौन क्या कर लेगा, right? So he attacked Kasim Bazar, and on 15 June 1756 Calcutta was also attacked and Fort William was besieged, and most of the officials, even the ladies, were captured, ladies were arrested by Sirajuddaulah, and all of them were brought to the and on 28 June 1756, the fall of Fort William was there, and Ranger Drake fled to Fulta Island. So here was a Fulta Island, and Ranger Drake fled with some of his supporters and officials to Fulta Island. And here Halwell later on goes on to become the Governor General of Bengal also, right? And he was one of the person who had surrendered with his allies in front of Sirajuddaulah, and Sirajuddaulah had brought 446 prisoners, and he closed all of them, all these 146 prisoners, in a small room that was completely dark, completely black, and was not having any kind of ventilation and all those kind of things. And due to suffocation, heat and the other things, what happened? On the next morning, around 23 to 21 people were only alive, and most of them died. And one of the alive people was Halwell also. He also survived somehow. And this incident was called as the Black Hole Tragedy, and this infuriated the East India Company, its officials, rulers, the Britishers, everyone got infuriated because of this. However, the writer of the history of that time from the Nawab of Bengal, Ghulam Hussain, does not mention it in Siyarul Mukhtaharin, right? So he had not mentioned this. So this basically this ordeal, the information about this ordeal was provided by Halwell himself. And on October 1756, military campaign was launched by Robert Clive on Calcutta. A military campaign was launched by Robert Clive on Calcutta. He reached out to Calcutta. Earlier he was at Madras, right? So he reached out to Calcutta, and here Manik Chandra took the bribe and handed over Calcutta to the British. So now the Calcutta was under the control of British, and this was basically through bribery. Clive attacked Bajbaj and captured Calcutta, and frightened of this, Sirajuddaulah proposed a treaty. After the fall of Calcutta, Sirajuddaulah offered a treaty. However, on 9 February 1757, the Treaty of Alinagar was signed between Robert Clive and the Sirajuddaulah, and terms of the treaty were factories were returned back to the English people, right? All those factories which had got confiscated or captured by Sirajuddaulah were returned back to the English people. War indemnities were paid. Right to fortify Calcutta was approved. Right to mint coin was given to the Britishers or the East India Company. And on March 1757, although the treaty was signed, the truce was achieved. But Robert Clive was in no mood to respect this treaty, because he was feeling humiliated because of the Black Hole Tragedy and fall of Fort William. So he was looking to avenge that misery, that क्या कहते हैं उसको, बेइज्जती, ठीक है, उसको अवेंज करने के लिए वो लगा हुआ था, ठीक है. So on March 1757, Chandranagar was won by Britishers in Bengal, which was a trading warehouse of the French. So the French lost, right? And ambition of the Britishers in Bengal was to install a puppet Nawab. Sirajuddaulah was very assertive. So a puppet Nawab. That was the need of the Britishers to expand their authority politically in the region. And the opponents of Nawab were approached. Who were they? Mir Jafar, Rai Durlab, Jagat Seth and Omi Chand. इसको अमीन चंद भी कहते हैं, ओमी चंद भी कहते हैं, right? So these were the people who were the traitors, and these people were approached by Britishers. And on April 1757, Watson at Qasim Bazar and Amin Chand and Mir Jafar concluded a treaty or concluded a pact, and here Sirajuddaulah was having the fear of Afghans and Marathas, Afghans from the western side, from Bihar side, and Marathas, that was the Maratha ditch that had been there around the Utkal coast. After the winning Odisha, the Marathas were at the gate of Bengal, right? So here Sirajuddaulah was frightened of this situation. So taking advantage of all these situation or the circumstances, Robert Clive on 23rd June 1757 attacked Murshidabad and marched towards Murshidabad, and the war was there 22 miles south of Murshidabad, because during that period Murshidabad was the capital of Bengal, right? Bengal province. So there was a village named Palasi 22 miles south of Murshidabad, and the Battle of Palasi occurred, right? And the first side was Robert Clive and his trained army. Second side was Nawab of Bengal with his 50,000 army. Although Robert Clive was having only around 2,000 people, but they were well trained, well equipped. However, the Nawab of Bengal was having 50,000 army, but they were not well trained, as well as the traitors were there. Mir Madan and Mohanlal were the only two people who were fighting this war bravely. These two people were die-hard supporter of Nawab. However, Mir Jafar, Rai Durlab, Yar Latif, all these people were the traitors who remained inactive throughout the war. So basically Robert Clive had won the war before even it had started, right? So what was the result of this war after the defeat of Sirajuddaulah? Bengal became a permanent part of British rule. Prosperous Bengal was looted to its fullest. जितना हो सकता था उतना लूट मचाई ब्रिटिशर्स ने. Having achieved a business monopoly, the Britishers moved on to the political monopoly in India. They were now looking to establish their political power in India. Money received from Bengal facilitated them to establish their authority in other provinces of India and colonies outside India. Such a huge amount of money they had received from Bengal. This one battle of Plassey proved to be a bonanza for the Britishers. Such a huge amount of money they had earned from this battle of Plassey, right? And you can imagine, first installment, only the first installment was of 8 lakh pound in silver. 8 lakh pound at that very time. आज के डेट में भी बहुत होता है, ठीक है, in silver coins. And Macaulay mentions it that more than 100 boats were brought to Calcutta. All those were filled with silver and gold coins, right? So such a kind of corpus that they had got, right? And Mir Jafar, the traitor, इसको क्लाइव्स जैकल भी कहते हैं, right? Clive's jackal, Mir Jafar. So he became the Nawab of Bengal, and on this occasion the Nawab gave gifts to the Britishers, generous gifts. अकेले क्लाइव को इतना मिल गया था कि कहना नहीं है, right? At some point of time he was the richest man of Britain, right? So 2,34,000 pounds were given in gift. 50 lakh rupees, 3 crore rupees. So such were the installments. Clive was awarded with a peerage. Clive was given the title of Clive's Jagir in 24 Pargana. Clive even got a Jagir in 24 Pargana. Right. Nowadays it is divided North 24 Pargana and South 24 Pargana. Earlier it was only 24 Pargana. Right. And in Murshidabad, Mir Jafar was called the Lord Clive's Jackal. Lord Clive's Jackal. Colonel Milson, a sack of gold. Such kind of thing we are being provided. ऐसे सीधा झोली भर के सोना मिल जा रहा था. So you can understand what kind of corpus or what kind of money Clive would have received. Right. Mir Jafar's bitterness among the Britishers. Mir Jafar and the Britishers relationship started to get strained. And what was the reason? Again and again, at any point of time, the Britishers were demanding the gift, money, any kind of thing from Mir Jafar. And gradually what happened? Mir Jafar was infuriated of their demands because his treasury was getting empty. उसका खुद का खजाना खाली होता जा रहा था. And because of that, he was not in a position to handle the administration properly, rule the region properly, and for that matter, at some point of time, he started to refuse the demands of the Britishers, and this started to sour the relationship between Mir Jafar and the Britishers. And Mir Jafar conspired with the Dutch against the British so as to come out of the clutches of the Britishers, but the Dutch were not in position to handle the Britishers. And in 1759 at Battle of Badr, the Dutch were driven out of India. They were defeated and they were driven out of India. And due to this conspiracy, Mir Jafar had to abdicate the throne in favor of Mir Qasim. And Mir Qasim was not like Mir Jafar. He was against the Britishers even before becoming the Nawab. But he was not showing it explicitly, so he became the Nawab. And as soon as he became the Nawab, what he did, he was the second most capable ruler of Bengal after Sirajuddaula. So he shifted the capital from Murshidabad to Munger. First of all, he thought that if he will distance himself from the Britishers, from their area of influence, so he will be in a better position to handle the situation, right? So he shifted the capital from Murshidabad to Munger in Bihar, right? And he made many administrative reforms. First of all, what he did, he strived or he did the work to eliminate corruption in revenue administration, confiscated the wealth of the rich Jamindars and the peoples, and he reduced the government's expenditure, and he had done some of the layoffs of the useless employees. So basically, he was running the administration with economic prudence so as to maximize the saving, maximize the revenue, and he was basically trying to maximize this revenue so as to invest that revenue, that money, in empowering or in building better army, right? So recovery of the outstanding money was also done from the landlords, and the deputy Subedar of Bihar, Ram Narayan, was basically killed or murdered by him because he was not ready to give the details of Bihar's income and expenditure. Basically, he was doing corruption, and for that matter he was killed. For that matter he was murdered by Mir Qasim, right? And increase in the number of soldiers was done by him. The number of soldiers was increased by him. The soldiers were trained in the European style, and who was the person who was training the soldiers of Mir Qasim? He was Gurgin Khan. He was an Armenian. Armenian, right? So he was well versed in the European war tactics and he was training the soldiers, and he established a ordnance factory, a factory to manufacture cannons and rifles at Munger, right? आज भी illegal arms के लिए मुंगेर बहुत famous है ना, right? And he ended the misuse of Farooq Siyar's golden decree. And how he ended this misuse? He exempted the tax for the Indian traders also. So now he brought the European traders and the Indian traders on the same footing, and through this the misuse of the Farooq Siyar's decree was reduced. And conflict started between Mir Qasim and the British because of all these initiatives. ब्रिटिशर्स को लगा कि क्या कर रहा है भाई, आर्मी को ट्रेनिंग दे रहा है, रेवेन्यू इंक्रीज कर रहा है, कैपिटल शिफ्ट कर लिया, टैक्स एग्जम्पशन जो एक्सक्लूसिवली हमारे लिए था उसको भी खत्म कर दिया, तो बचा क्या हमारे पास? सो दैट वाज द सिचुएशन. एंड आफ्टर बीइंग डिफीटेड बाय द ब्रिटिश इन द सेवरल वार्स बिफोर द बैटल ऑफ बक्सर, मीर कासिम had fled to Awadh from Munger. First of all, he took refuge in Patna and thereafter he fled to Awadh. And here Mir Qasim made a military organization, an alliance against the British. And who were the participants of this alliance? Participants were Shah Alam II, the Mughal Emperor, Shuja-ud-Daula, Nawab of Awadh, and Mir Qasim, the tripartite frontier. And the Battle of Buxar occurred on 22nd October 1764. And here one side was the English army led by Hector Munro with 700 soldiers, and second party was United Front Army, that is the tripartite alliance of the Nawabs and Mughal Emperor, right? So this was the situation in the Battle of Buxar. And in the Battle of Buxar, a decisive war was fought by which the whole Bengal, the complete Bengal province or the Bengal presidency came under the control of the Britishers by the Treaty of Allahabad that was signed between Robert Clive and Shah Alam II. So the first Treaty of Allahabad was signed on 12 August 1765 between Clive and Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II. Shah Alam II received the Diwani rights of Bengal, Bihar and Orissa from him. Robert Clive received the Diwani rights. So the Diwani rights of the Bengal, Bihar and Orissa was given to the Britishers or Robert Clive by Shah Alam II. And it was decided to give Shah Alam II an annual pension of 26 lakh rupees in return of this Diwani rights, right? Second Treaty of Allahabad was signed on 16th August 1765 and it took place between Robert Clive and Shuja-ud-Daula. Here again he got a war indemnity of 50 lakh rupees. 50 लाख रुपए पैसा तो धुना धुन लेते थे नहीं. And the company also acquired the fort of Chunar. Chunar is also very famous because of the architectural regions, right? So those who know why Chunar is famous in the field of art and culture, that is architecture also, should mention that in the comment section, right? So here Kara and Allahabad was given to the Mughal Emperor and the state of Banaras and Gazipur was given to the ancestral state of Raja Balwant Singh. He was the ancestral ruler or Jamindar of this Kara state of Banaras and Gazipur, and that was given to him, right? And English military contingent were stationed in Awadh. So English military contingent had to station at Awadh. For this the permission was granted by Shuja-ud-Daula, and again Shuja-ud-Daula, the Nawab of Awadh, had to pay for the maintenance of this contingents, right? So the expenses were to be borne by the Nawab of Awadh, right? मतलब उसी के खर्चे से, नवाब के ही खर्चे से नवाब के ऊपर कंट्रोल किए हुए, right? Now diarchy was introduced in Bengal. Dual rule, diarchy. The Bengal was being ruled by both the company and the Nawab. The responsibility without rights was with the Nawab, right? And Raja Khan, the Diwan of Bengal, and Raja Sitab Rai was the Diwan of Bihar. And there was anarchy, corruption, collapse of trade and commerce in the whole of Bengal, and the farmers were the victim of poverty due to this dual rule. Because what was happening? The right to collect the revenue and law and order was under the company. However, to look after the welfare and the other things was with the Nawab, and that is the Raja Sitab Rai and Raja Khan. And in 1770, Bengal famine occurred, which was a devastating famine, and many of the people of Bengal perished due to this famine because of the lack of food and other things, right? Now, Mysore, again an important empire, important territory, right? And this also have a very important place in the history of India, because Mysore was one of the empire which had disturbed the Britishers too much, right? So the Vijayanagara Empire came to an end in the Battle of Talikot in 1565, and thereafter disintegration of the Vijayanagara Empire started, and it got divided into many parts. And on the remains of this empire, Mysore was one of the empire that born out of it, and it became a prominent state or prominent empire among many of the empires that came into princely states and came into existence after the disintegration of Vijayanagara Empire. And on 18th century, Hyder Ali became the ruler of Mysore state based on his ability. Basically, he was not that much educated, that much literate, but he was having great military capabilities. He was a great commander, and joining at a lower rank, he climbed the position to the commander-in-chief of Mysore very soon because of his capabilities. And later on, what he did, he removed the ruler of Mysore himself, right? So he was appointed as the Faujdar of Dindigal fort by Nananjraj, and the French were having establishments at Dindigal, and they had established a modern arsenal, right? So here Hyder Ali, if we talk about Hyder Ali and his rise, so in 1761 he took over the power of Mysore by removing Nanraj, who had made him the Subedar of this Faujdar of this Dindigal region. And in 1763 he captured Bedmore or the Srirangapatnam, right? And Irangapatnam. The second name is Irangapatnam, and he established himself as the emperor. And in 1780 he fought this second Anglo-Mysore war, in which he died. So in 1780 he died, and in 1782 Tipu Sultan had ascended to the throne of Mysore. So now we will talk about Anglo-Mysore war, and in total there were 4 Anglo-Mysore wars. First 2 was fought by Hyder Ali himself, and the last 2 were fought by Tipu Sultan, right? Now, first Anglo-Mysore war, that was in 1765, between 1767 and 69. The first Anglo-Mysore War was the result of aggressive policies of the British. So basically, British were becoming too much assertive in the region. They were trying to get access to the western coast, Carnatic coast, and due to this, they were becoming assertive in the Mysore region, Mysore Empire. And for that matter, what happened? Due to this, Hyder Ali got infuriated and there was a war between the Britishers and an alliance between Hyder Ali, Marathas and the Nizam, right? So Nizam of Hyderabad. All these three formed a joint military front, and initially what happened? Basically, the Marathas were also trying to capture the regions from Mysore. Nizam was also assertive in the region. So, first of all, showing his political competence, Hyder Ali negotiated the treaty or alliance between with Marathas and the Nizam to handle the Britishers. So, what he did, he made a treaty, he made an alliance with Marathas and Nizam, and he invaded Karnataka where the Britishers were defeated, right? And in the Treaty of Madras 1769 that was signed between Hyder Ali and Britishers on April 4, 1669, Britishers got humiliated. उनको लगा कि यार एक इंडियन एम्पायर is talking with us at level and we are forced to negotiate the treaty with him. What kind of humiliation is this? तो उनको अपने आप में बेइज्जती लगने लगी, right? So here what happened? Exchange of the prisoners and the captured places of each other. Britishers faced a big blow at their pride because an Indian power was at their gates in Madras. So when Carnatic was invaded by Hyder Ali, so they had reached out to the gates of Madras even. Right. Now, Tipu Sultan, 1782 to 99, he was the son of Hyder Ali, ascended throne in 1782, and he introduced a new calendar and a new system of coin minting, right? And in Srirangapatnam, an independence tree was planted by him as a symbol of Mysore French friendship. He was also the member of Jacobean Club, right? And he used to take 1/3 of the production as the land revenue from his farmers, his subjects, and he was a bit of tolerant, or you can say secular person. So he used to appoint Hindus also as officials in his court and at high positions, and two people, prominent people, Purania and Krishna Rao were his two prominent Hindu ministers, right? So again this becomes important. All the informations are actually important, but some of the points are like that they are some kind of exotic information, and for that matter it becomes important that you people should focus on that also, right? So here in Mysore, for the construction of the idol of goddess Sarda in the Sringeri temple, Tipu Sultan had donated huge amount of money, right? And second Anglo-Mysore war took place between 1780 and 84. 4 साल तक इन लोग लड़ते रहते थे, पता नहीं, right? And this was between Hyder Ali and the British, and this was because attack on Hyder Ali by the Marathas in 1771, and during this period when the Marathas attacked Hyder Ali asked for support, asked for help to the Britishers, and this was negotiated in the first treaty between the Hyder Ali, the ruler of Mysore, and the Britishers, that whenever now onwards, if Hyder Ali needs the help against the Marathas or the Nawab of Hyderabad, Nizam of Hyderabad in fact, then Britishers will come to his rescue, will come out to help him. But they do not fulfill their commitment, they do not respect the treaty, and for that matter, Hyder Ali got infuriated. And that is why Hyder Ali, after concluding the war with Maratha, he attacked the British establishments. कि आप भाई गड़बड़ करते हो, right? And the immediate cause of the war was the capture of Mahe by the British. So Mahe was a French establishment, a French trade center, Mahe Karakal and all those things. And the Britishers captured it, and the Mysore was having a good relationship with the French also. So due to the capture of Mahe, Hyder Ali attacked Britishers, and he was also of the view that if the Britishers are again becoming aggressive and assertive, then there may be the situation that when Britishers will again attack Mysore also, so why not to attack them first hand, right? So Hyder Ali died in this battle, and thereafter Tipu Sultan became the ruler, and the Treaty of Mangalore was signed in 1784, and here it was between Governor Lord Macartney and Tipu, and both the sides returned the captured or occupied territories of each other. The prisoners of war were also released, and the third Anglo-Mysore war took place between 1790 and 92, and here on the one side were the Lord Cornwallis, that is the British Nizam of Hyderabad, and the Maratha, that is a tripartite alliance was there against Tipu Sultan. And this was because, first of all, Hyder Ali and Tipu, Marathas were not having the good relation. Marathas were always looking for expansion of their territories, as well as they were raiding the regions of Mysore. So Mysore, or the ruler of Mysore, Tipu Sultan, was infuriated of Marathas. So he was looking for attacking Marathas, and the Marathas formed a tripartite alliance, and Tipu invaded Travancore in April 1790, Travancore, and that was a British establishment. British took the side of Travancore's king and the war started. So here the Britishers were supporter of Travancore, and due to this the war started. And at Arikera, Tipu was defeated by Lord Cornwallis in 1791, and again the Treaty of Srirangapattam was signed in March 1792. Here Tipu had to forego almost half of his empire. He lost almost half of his empire to the allies, that is Britishers, Marathas and Nizam. Tipu paid 3 crore rupees as war damages, and some of the damages he was not able to pay immediately, and for that matter, as mortgage or as security, the Britishers had took 2 of his sons, right? So this was also the situation. And fourth Anglo-Mysore war took place in 1799. Here Tipu tried to seek international cooperation against the Britishers. International powers were being contacted by Tipu Sultan to get support against the Britishers, maybe in the form of arms or whatever it is. So he also corresponded with Napoleon. He wrote several letters to Napoleon, and on May 4, 1799, Tipu and the combined English forces fought a war, and in this Tipu Sultan got killed. On May 4, 1799, Tipu Sultan was killed by the combined forces of British. And to commemorate the victory, Wellesley was conferred with the title of Marquis. This was the title given to Lord Wellesley after killing Tipu, right? and the entire Mysore came under the British rule. Whatever was left behind after the Treaty of Srirangapatnam, all that was also confiscated by the British Empire, acquired by the British Empire. Now the Karnataka war, और कर्नाटिक भी कहते हैं इसको इंग्लिश में, कर्नाटिक, right? So between the Britishers and the French there was the struggle for power or for authority over this South Indian region or the coastal region, and here both of them were trying to influence the rulers or the emperors of the region, and here it was located on the Coromandel coast. The Coromandel coast was the basic cause of conflict between the British and the French, right? That the region between the Krishna and Godavari, right? And for the control of this, Karnataka continued for 20 years. The Britishers and the French struggled with each other, fought with each other, confronted with each other, skirmishes were there for 20 years. Madras and Puducherry was being administered by the British and the French respectively. Madras was under Britishers and Puducherry at that very time it was named as Pondicherry was under French, and Karnataka was under the control of Subedar of Deccan, that is its capital was at Arcot. Fort of Arcot is also famous, War of Arcot is also famous. So the first Carnatic War was between 1746 and 1748, and the immediate cause of this war was the succession, ठीक है, capture of some of the French ships by the English Captain Bernard, right? English Captain Bernard. So basically, for the control of Coromandel coast to be assertive in this region, many of the times what was happening, each other's ships was being captured by French and the Britishers on the pretext that this was coming to attack us, arms was on that, and the various other things, right? So such kind of pretext was being given. So here what happened, French governor Mauritius, from Mauritius, La Bourdonnais and Dupleix forced Madras governor Morse to surrender. So at this time what happened, the governor of Mauritius, French governor of Mauritius sailed to India, and along with Dupleix, the governor in India, they fought a war, or they encircled or forced Madras governor Morse to surrender. The British were helpless against the French, and now Anwaruddin of Karnataka under the leadership of Muzaffar Khan helped the French. Anwaruddin was favoring the French. Basically, he was in a close friendship relation with the French, right? An army of 10,000 soldiers attacked the French, right? And Captain Paradise led the Battle of Saint Thome, and Anwaruddin was defeated, right? And here in 1748 there was a treaty that is known as Aix-la-Chapelle. In this what happened, India's unorganized military power was exposed. The end of this war, first Carnatic War, was there at the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle, and here basically the situation that was prevalent in the Indian army or the armed forces that was with the emperors, that they are not well equipped, they are not well trained, they are not disciplined, they do not know the modern war tactics and all those kind of things, and these all things were exposed to the European powers, and Dupleix was having a political thrust. He wanted to establish a political empire in India, and after witnessing this weakness of the Indian armies, Indian rulers, he thought that it is quite easy to establish a rule or a political empire in India. So that was his approach. Now the second Carnatic War occurred between 1749 and 1754. So here what happened, Deccan, that is Hyderabad and Karnataka, in both of these regions there was a controversy or a tug of war for succession. So in Deccan or in Hyderabad, what was the situation? Asaf Shahi dynasty was ruling. So here Nasir Jung and Muzaffar Jung were two contenders. Basically, Nasir Jung became the Nawab of Hyderabad and Nizam of Hyderabad, and Muzaffar Jung challenged his succession. Next, in Carnatic, what happened? Anwaruddin and Chanda Sahib were two contenders. Anwaruddin became the Nawab of Carnatic. However, Chanda Sahib challenged it. So Duplessis supported Muzaffar Jung and Chanda Sahib, and British supported Nasir Jung and Anwaruddin. So here you will see that in total there are 6 powers, 2 contenders of throne in each of these 2 subas, whatever you say, the provinces, the empires, and 2 European powers. So in total 6 parties are there. And on August 1749, Battle of Ambur occurred, Battle of Amber. And on one side there was Muzaffar Jung, Chanda Sahib and the French. 3 people, 3 sides. On the other side, 3 contenders were there, Nasir Jung, Anwaruddin and the British, total 6. And in December 1750, Nasir Jung was killed in another conflict. So the situation of this Hyderabad was clear, Deccan was clear. And now here what happened? Muzaffar Jung became the governor of Deccan and Chanda Sahib became the Nawab of Carnatic, and Anwaruddin was killed. And in South India, French influence was at its peak during this time, because the supporters of French, the French were supporting these people who became the rulers in these both respective regions. And Duplessis was here the governor of the region that was south of Krishna River, and French contingent were stationed at Hyderabad, and Bassis presidency was there, and he started this subsidiary alliance system. So during the Bassis reign, Bassis presidency, they signed this subsidiary alliance system with Hyderabad, and the French contingents were stationed at Hyderabad for the help of Nizam of Hyderabad. And basically subsidiary alliance system was a kind of system where you can, basically the Europeans were renting out their armies. यहाँ पर फ्रेंच ने क्या किया, निजाम जो हैदराबाद का था उसको लगा कि भाई मैं कमजोर पड़ रहा हूँ, तो मुझे सपोर्ट की जरूरत है, आई नीड सम सपोर्ट फ्रॉम सम एक्सटर्नल पावर, एंड फॉर दैट मैटर उसने साइन किया सब्सिडियरी अलायंस। किसके साथ? निजाम के साथ, फ्रेंच के साथ। और फ्रेंच के साथ अलायंस साइन करने के बाद क्या हुआ कि वहां पर उनको रेंट पे मिल गई फ्रेंच आर्मी, दैट वाज स्टेशन एट Hyderabad, right? So here the Muhammad Ali took refuge in the fort of Trichy, and this was a very important incident. So French and Chanda Sahib tried to besiege it. Robert Clive failed to break the siege, and Robert Clive tried hard to invade this fort of Trichy to get Muhammad Ali. But with the help of 210 soldiers, however, he captured fort of Arcot, and Chanda Sahib was there with 4,000 soldiers could not win Arcot, and Robert Clive was in position to held the position at Arcot, right? And in 1752, what happened? Stringer Lawrence again attacked Tiruchirappalli and won it, right? And the French talent was wasted. French tried to stop this invasion, but they failed, right? And Raja of Tanjore, Chanda Sahib, was murdered by treachery, right? Raja of Tanjore was murdered by Chanda Sahib by treachery. Duplessis' defeat at treachery was the doom of French power. Duplessis' defeat was like a nail in the coffin of the French power, right? So here what happened? Duplessis was recalled because of his failure, and Godedou became the new French governor on August 1st, 1754. Right, and on 1755 in the Treaty of Pondicherry was signed between the two companies, that is the British and the French company, French East India Company and the British East India Company. And here what happened? The supremacy of the English army was established, recognized, and Muhammad Ali became the Nawab of Carnatic. Hyderabad new Subedar Salar Jung was appointed, and the French acquired only Jagir, some Jagir from Hyderabad. Both promised not to interfere in the disputes of the local emperors or Indian kings. इनके फटे में टांग नहीं देना है, right? Next, the Third Carnatic War, 1757 to 1763. Again, this was the result of European conflict because the war was going on in Europe between the French and the English, and the immediate cause was the desire to capture Chandan Nagar. Chandan Nagar was an important center of trade of the French. So, in 1758, the French governor Count Lely sent to Karnataka, and in 1758 Count Lely won the Fort David of Chandannagar, and Lely also attacked Tandavur and Madras and failed to conquer them. His attempt was failed, and Lely also attacked Hyderabad, and Bassi was called to help him, which was the biggest mistake of the French, right? And on 22nd January 1760, the Battle of Vandivas, and this Battle of Vandivas is very important in the history of French and the Britishers, because in this Battle of Vandivas the French were completely washed out. बैटल ऑफ वंडीवास में कंप्लीट वॉश आउट हो गए, राइट? लीडर्स ऑफ द इंग्लिश आर्मी वेयर आयरकूट, एंड देयर वाज अ डिसिसिव बैटल, एंड द लीडर ऑफ द फ्रेंच आर्मी वाज लैले. एंड हियर व्हाट हैपेंड? जूनियर मॉरिन, J.R. Morion, mentions that Duplessis discovered India's capital in Madras. Clive made a terrible mistake. He discovered it in Bengal. And why he was mentioning this? Because Bengal was in far north, and from there the trade was a bit difficult. So this was the opinion of J.R. Morion. And in 1763 there was a Treaty of Paris which ended the 7-year war in Europe, and this treaty also ended the war between the French and the British in India also. वहाँ वॉर खत्म होता था, ट्रीटी साइन होती थी, इधर भी काम खत्म हो जाता था, ठीक है? It ended the war in India, and with this Treaty of Paris, what happened? The French were confined to only 4 territories with them: Mahi, Karaikal, Puducherry, and other, right? So here we finished the first discussion of coming and expansion of the Europeans. Thank you for watching the video, and those who have not joined the course, go on to join the course. It is going to be very fruitful, very helpful for you to clear the BPSC prelims examination, and you will get the PDF notes also, question bank also, discussion videos also. All these kind of things will be available over there. Thank you very much, and come back for the next video. Have a nice day.